Good morning, I'm Taylor Wilson, and today is Monday, August 18th, 2025. This is USA Today's The Excerpt. Today, Ukraine's leader and others head to Washington for Trump talks, plus what's next for clean energy in the U.S., and how some parents with children who require 24/7 care fear dying first. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy and European leaders will meet with President Donald Trump in Washington today to map out a peace deal. The meetings come after Trump sit down with Russian President Vladimir Putin in Alaska on Friday, and amid concerns from some that he could try to pressure Ukraine into accepting a settlement favorable to Moscow. Other leaders set to make the trip stateside include British Prime Minister Keir Starmer, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, and NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte, among others. Friday's Alaska summit saw no major breakthrough in peace negotiations. After the meeting, Putin declared that an agreement had been reached that could solve the Ukrainian issue and restore business-like relations with the United States. Shortly after, Trump said there was only progress toward a deal without providing details. Meanwhile, we're learning that government documents with details about meeting schedules and seating charts, as well as an extravagant menu and reminder on how to pronounce President Vladimir Putin's name, were accidentally left in a hotel printer in Alaska. The documents with State Department markings, reported by NPR, were discovered in the printer in an Anchorage hotel hours before the meeting at a nearby military base. Is America done with clean energy? President Trump's clean energy cuts are putting the future of wind and solar power in peril. I discussed with USA Today national correspondent Elizabeth Weiss. Thanks for hopping on, Beth.
Happy to be here.
So I know this is a long list, but what are some of the orders Trump has issued as it pertains to limiting new solar and wind projects nationwide?
The first big one was on January 20th when the administration temporarily withdrew all permits for offshore wind projects. That has since been applied to onshore wind and solar on federal lands. On July 7th, all subsidies for wind and solar projects were ended, though federal subsidies for coal, oil, and natural gas were left in place. On the 15th, the Department of the Interior issued a decision saying that all permits for wind and solar projects on federal land had to go through new layers of review up to and including the Secretary of Interior. And then there was a whole spate of them that came out on July 29th that governed all of the agencies in the Department of the Interior and how they were to look at potential wind and solar permits on federal land.
Beth, just to try to tap into the Trump administration perspective a bit here, why do he and his team, argue in favor of these moves?
The Trump administration feels that wind and to a somewhat lesser degree solar, because they're intermittent sources of power, they are unreliable. Much of the infrastructure they feel is built outside of the US, and it's true some of it is built in China, though less over the last couple of years. And also that both wind and solar take up more space, and you can say that a nuclear plant or a natural gas plant is more energy dense because if you only look at the footprint of the actual plant, it's much smaller, though you also arguably could include the footprint of all of the oil and gas wells that went into it. And the president has for a very long time has a strong dislike of wind turbines, solar less so.
Can we just establish how big a part of the energy sector wind and solar are in the U.S. currently?
Wind and solar now make up 17% of US electricity production, which is a lot. And it's a number that has been going up really significantly in the last couple of years as we have built a whole lot more wind and solar farms. And the number was anticipated to increase up to 25% in the next couple of years. It's unclear if that's going to happen now.
You also outlined this in the piece. Power demands are really at an all-time high in the country, correct?
So that's the interesting counterpoint to all this, that partially because of climate change, but a lot is because we're really increasing the number of data centers and especially AI that's being built, and they are enormous energy consumers. And so the amount of electricity that the United States needs is going up a lot. Under the Biden administration, there had been a push to build out a lot more renewables to help produce that electricity. Under the Trump administration, the feeling is more that that electricity should be coming from generally natural gas, though the president also has a warm spot for coal.
And, I'd imagine clean energy advocates are pushing back here, not thrilled. What did you hear from them in reporting this?
One person that I spoke with who works in this field said, "We know that with each administration, you're going to get a slightly different take on what we should be doing with federal lands." The Trump administration is starting to make inroads on permitting on private land, and that's something new, and that's something that they're quite concerned about because they see it as an overreach. And only 5% of wind and solar is built on public land, most of it's on private land. And so that's a concern. Nobody's filed any lawsuits yet, partially because nobody exactly understands how this is all gonna play out, but I would anticipate that we will be seeing lawsuits in the future.
I found it interesting, Beth, that you wrap this piece talking about China. Where does the US now stand on clean energy compared to the rest of the world?
China is eating our shorts when it comes to wind and solar at this point. China is installing wind and solar projects faster than any other country. In 2023, they built more wind and solar power than the rest of the world combined. They now produce energy or electricity from wind and solar more than they produce it from coal and gas. Some of the experts that I spoke with are very concerned about this because there's kind of an arms race between the US and China in terms of technology. And China is very much pulling ahead with this technology. A guy who's been studying this for decades, taught at Columbia, said, the US could be surrendering many of its advantages, and it's unclear how we're going to get those back. So there's concern about China.
Interesting piece here from you. Beth Elizabeth Weiss is a national correspondent with USA Today. Thanks, Beth.
Thanks again.
Hundreds of rallies were held over the weekend as pro-democracy activists and labor groups protested the Trump administration's push for Texas to redraw its congressional map in favor of Republicans. Dozens of Democratic state lawmakers have fled the state to deny Republicans the quorum needed to vote on a redistricting plan that Trump had pushed for. The Texas Democrats kept the map from coming to a vote during a special session Texas Governor Greg Abbott called that ended Friday. He immediately called a second special session. He said that redistricting plans and other legislative work cannot be done because Democrats are absent. Redistricting efforts are also ongoing in Florida and Ohio that could benefit Republicans, among other states. And last week, California's Democratic Governor Gavin Newsom unveiled his state's own redistricting plan that he says would give Democrats there 5 more congressional seats, possibly offsetting Republican gains in Texas. Some caregiver parents don't only fear the death of their child, they fear dying first. I spoke with USA Today Women in the Caregiving Economy reporting fellow Madeline Mitchell for more about one family in particular, the Groffs, and others like them. Madeline, thank you so much for joining me on this.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And so, what are some of the challenges they face in their daily life?
I think the biggest challenge for the Groffs, from what they've shared with me, is Danny's seizures. He has seizures every day, sometimes multiple times a day, and those range in intensity. The cleanup for those seizures can sometimes be pretty involved, and sometimes he does have to go to the hospital and get care. So it really depends on the day.
Well, Madeline, you title this piece, These Parents Don't Only Fear the Death of Their Child, They Fear Dying First. So I'll ask, what are the parents' concerns about dying someday before Danny? What are they most worried about?
He needs help with showering and eating and all of these other things. They've spent the last 39 years trying to perfect their daily routine and being able to anticipate his needs every day. And so their concern, if they are no longer around to care for him, is that there might not be another person that knows his needs the way that they do. They do have another daughter, Jessica, who grew up with Danny. And so she probably would be the next in line person that would know the things that Danny needs day to day. But that's also a really big responsibility to put on their daughter, who is now grown up and has a family of her own to take care of as well.
Madeline, in terms of resources, this is such a difficult daily existence, really. I mean, where can families like the Groffs turn to for help?
What I've heard from families in this situation is that they really lean on each other. So I know a lot of families go to Facebook groups where they find other families across the country who have children with the same disability or rare disease as their own child. And so there's some comfort there in being able to talk to someone else who gets it. But there's also resources online. The Groffs actually helped contribute to a sort of online binder, a resource that goes through a lot of the challenges that families of children with rare epilepsy disorders have. And so it talks about this idea of what are those next steps if the parents are no longer there to care for them? How do you have conversations with other family members? How do you set up guardianship? How do you do estate planning? And, getting all of these things in place so that if there is an emergency, that information is on hand.
You mentioned estate planning. I mean, I'd imagine this is a massive financial undertaking, right?
It is. Whether your person you care for stays in your home and you have around the clock nursing staff or even friends and family members who are trained as caregivers come to the home, that can still be really expensive. Or if you decide you want to move the person you care for to some sort of care facility, that can be expensive as well. But there's also a lot of red tape here when you think about the funds that these people will get from the government. There are certain rules. So if someone is given the estate after their parents die, they might not be eligible for some government benefits. So you really want to talk with a lawyer. And that's what I've heard again and again in researching for this story, is that families of children with disabilities and rare diseases really early on should be contacting a disability lawyer so that they can kind of help walk you through what those rules and regulations are.
Well, bringing it back to this Groff family in particular, Madeline, what's next for them going forward?
So the Groffs had an in-home nurse for 25 years, and she recently retired. So even though the Groffs are thinking about longer term planning right now and what might happen if they pass away in, 10, 15, how many years, they're really immediately looking for a nurse to replace the person who just retired. And Karen Groff, Danny's mother, was sharing with me how sad she was that this person retired because over, again, that span of 25 years, this person really got to know the family. She became part of the family and was able to anticipate Danny's needs like no one else. And so having to start over from scratch, finding another nurse that can do that for them is really hard, especially since paid caregivers are not typically paid enough for the kind of work that they do. And it's already been several months. The Groffs shared that they anticipate it taking another 6 months to another year before they'll even find someone that fits their needs. So that's the immediate struggle that they're having right now.
Wow. Well, Madeline Mitchell covers women in the caregiver economy for USA Today. Madeline, this was a great piece, excellent journalism, bringing a spotlight to families like the Groffs. Thanks for hopping on.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to The Excerpt. You can get the podcast wherever you get your pods. And as always, you can email us at podcasts@usatoday.com. I'm Taylor Wilson. I'll be back tomorrow with more of The Excerpt from USA Today.